Sold as a child, mocked as a kitchen slave, Hee-Yun's life in the Nine Nether Demon sect was nothing but hunger and humiliation, until the night the Eternal Soul Pearl, the sect's most sacred relic, awakened inside him. In an instant, the boy everyone ignored became the one the elders feared. The system roared to life, points skyrocketed, his levels soared, and new talents surfaced. Corpse explosion, know-it-all, strength that shouldn't exist. He never sought power. He only wanted freedom. But when he saved a woman named Wu Cheyenne from bandits, the world finally saw what he'd become, a walking weapon hidden inside a servant's shell. Whispers spread through the sect. Some called him blessed by fate, others cursed by demons, and as his strength grew, so did the eyes watching from the shadows, waiting for the moment he'd lose control. Now the Hall of Joy hunts him. Witches whisper his name, and the sect plots to reclaim the relic he never asked for. With each battle, Hee-Yun grows closer to the truth that some gifts are curses wearing gold. He was born to serve, but destined to destroy.
Lately, I've had a strong addiction to watching manhwa and manga recap videos. Every single day, I find myself binging one after another, losing hours and days doing absolutely nothing productive. And honestly, it's getting out of hand. So, maybe we can make these viral videos too. I mean, look at the views, the growth, the community these creators are building. It looks simple, right? But that's a trap. You go down this endless rabbit hole spending money, losing sleep, hiring editors and writers from Fiverr and Upwork and still feel like you've been robbed. Because don't forget how emotional the YouTube algorithm can be with making videos go viral. It's unpredictable, especially when the market's saturated, competition's relentless, and somehow other creators are dropping 10-hour videos daily while you're stuck trying to finish one. That's when I realized something had to change. So, I built the solution, the Webtoon Narrative Suite, a complete one-click system that handles everything from cropping, script narration, text-to-speech, image processing, and full video generation in one smooth process. Save money, reduce hours of work, and have a tool that only gives you straight results. Click on the link down below and experience it for yourself. And if you want even more tools to supercharge your YouTube recap journey, visit my Ko-Fi and Patreon pages where I drop weekly new tools designed to keep you ahead as AI continues to steal our jobs. So tap in now before you get left behind.
The man's vigilance faltered briefly, and in that vulnerable moment, a demoness consumed by desire seized him and pulled him into the shadowy depths of the forest. Things became even more humiliating for him as she continually complimented his appearance, all while pressing him down. Was the name he carried in this life. After being reincarnated, he had been sold as a child to the Nine Nether Demon sect, forced to earn his keep by gathering mushrooms and cooking meals. In just 6 more months, he would finally have enough to purchase his freedom. After that, nothing would hold him back. He longed to leave this twisted sect behind forever. Being someone who had traveled from another world, he naturally possessed a unique advantage of his own. Despite gathering countless spirit beads, he found that the system offered him no reward other than a simple message urging him to continue his efforts. He began to wonder if Pink, a low-cost imitation brand, had created this system. He continued to complain about the situation. A gentle sound emerged as leaves in the nearby bushes began to move. Introduced himself as just a kitchen worker and asked anyone nearby to take it easy on him. Startled, he let out a yelp and quickly moved backward. A woman's icy, authoritative voice pierced the air as she threatened to end his life if he did not approach immediately. Despite his anger and fear, he pushed aside his pride and took a hesitant step forward. Suddenly, a pair of pale hands lunged forward and seized his leg. The force that struck him was overwhelming, leaving him no chance to respond as he was thrown violently to the ground. She stood there, her beauty surpassing all logic. Noticing that she was struggling to catch her breath, he was suddenly filled with fear. He wondered anxiously about her identity, realizing he was only a beginner in dual cultivation, and worried that she might seriously hurt him. The rules of their sect strictly prohibited harming fellow members. She paid him no attention as she ripped apart his coarse linen shirt. She cut him off sharply, her eyes narrowed in anger as she looked down at him. He tried to lift his second body to its feet, but stammered that he was unable to do so. A sinister grin crossed her face as she expelled a wriggling, unsettling worm from her mouth, offering her assistance with a mocking expression. She instructed the other person to swallow it, promising that doing so would leave them with a memory they would never forget. At that moment, he understood that she was known throughout the land as the notorious witch who commanded 10,000 insects. He insisted that he was capable of managing the situation on his own, his voice filled with urgency. Without hesitation, she forced the worm into his mouth, showing no concern for his protests. Her expression made it clear that she had no patience for delays. As soon as it slid down his throat, a sudden jolt shot through his entire body, making him sit bolt upright. The woman's lips curled into a sly, wicked grin as if she believed fortune had chosen her target. What came next was a relentless, all-night clash that erupted into utter chaos. As the first light of morning broke, she stirred from sleep, her sense of tranquility and self-control restored. With a swift movement of her hand, her clothes reappeared, sparkling as they settled neatly onto her body. Her name sent waves of fear through the land, even reaching the formidable Queen Wu Xian, the leader of the demonic cult. She gazed at the man sprawled unconscious at her feet. She stretched with a relaxed ease, quietly noting to herself that surviving the whole day was quite an achievement for an ordinary human. In her mind, such endurance made for an ideal candidate to serve as a vessel for medicine. It was unfortunate for him, as encountering her meant he was reduced to nothing more than discarded remnants. Although the poison still lingered in her system, it no longer posed an immediate threat. She reassured herself in a quiet murmur that she would handle it when the time was right. That day marked the loss of their innocence, a secret that had to remain forever unspoken. As a member of the Nine Nether sect, they believed that sacrificing one's life for them should be considered a great honor. At the very moment when her hand lifted, ready to deliver the final blow, a radiant light erupted from her chest, pulsing with an unfamiliar, vibrant energy. A sudden burst of energy took Wu by surprise, leaving her bewildered as she realized the Eternal Soul Pearl was responding to something. Without a moment's pause, she descended directly onto Ah's face, shutting her eyes to better feel the movement of energy. She wondered if the pearl might have responded to something within this man. She directed the artifact's energy to his lower abdomen, then suddenly stopped, stunned. Her treasured item, bound to her very existence, was seamlessly fusing with the core of his spirit. Pearl felt her heart race with anticipation. She called upon her eternal soul, urging it to protect the man before her. Excitement surged through her as she recognized his value. He was not someone to be discarded, but rather someone who embodied healing itself. The scene moved to the inner hall of the demonic palace, where Wu Xian entered, injured yet still breathing. Resentment flared within her, a fiery ache she could not ignore. She realized then that those who claimed to be virtuous resorted to underhanded tactics, relying on deceit and venom rather than honor. Suddenly, her form began to diminish in size as visible currents of spiritual energy flowed out of her, leaving her weakened. She made her way unsteadily to a mirror near the spirit pool and was startled to find the reflection of a teenage girl gazing back at her. A harsh curse slipped from her lips as she glared ahead. Determined to get revenge after regaining her strength, she vowed to destroy her enemies and force them to surrender the antidote. She pulled at the oversized robe, its fabric hanging loosely on her now diminished figure. Without warning, the room was plunged into darkness as the candles snuffed out. A shadowy figure descended noiselessly from the rooftop, landing inside the chamber. The cult leader's voice echoed through the space, her tone icy as she delivered a warning. This was her secret hall, and anyone who dared enter would meet their end. Despite her exhaustion, her senses remained razor-sharp. She shifted quickly, narrowly avoiding the attack without difficulty. With a swift and elegant turn, she moved so quickly that she was suddenly positioned behind her assailant, her fingers closing firmly around the intruder's neck. Her tone lowered, carrying a threatening edge as she reminded not to forget the authority of his master. His eyes snapped open at the sound of the voice, and she carefully examined the individual standing in front of her. It was only at that moment that she understood. The girl before her was, in fact, the leader of the cult. When Fang Yin showed signs of recognition, Wu In loosened her grip at last. She showed no emotion as she turned her back and walked confidently toward the elevated chair. Before retreating into solitude, had been reminded to maintain order within the hall and avoid creating any disturbances, as causing trouble was something that was deeply despised. Yin's spirit sank under the weight of the criticism. She silently berated herself, thinking of her own foolishness, and wondered if she had misunderstood the other person's intentions. Upon hearing those words, Wu swiftly lifted Fang Yin's chin and regarded her with exasperation, thinking that Fang Yin's foolishness surpassed all understanding. He wondered aloud if the person before him might have revealed the secret location of his hideaway, since he had made it clear that only they were entrusted with that information. Yin grasped Wu's ankle tightly, her voice trembling as she insisted that she could never betray her. She admitted she would rather keep Wu hidden away just to gaze at her, making it impossible to reveal her location to anyone. Desperate for answers, she pleaded for the identity of the person responsible, promising to destroy their whole family as revenge. Seeing this display, Wu gave an approving nod and expressed her suspicion that Tai Su was the one who attacked her. The request for strict secrecy about the end of seclusion was emphasized, along with instructions to discreetly deliver the Eternal Soul Pearl to the kitchens so that he could be entrusted with its safekeeping. Fang Yin froze in shock, her mind swirling with the knowledge that the pearl was the master's most valued possession, and whispers among outsiders claimed it held the power power to rule. Without waiting for further questions, Wu dismissed her with an impatient gesture, insisting she follow orders and keep silent. The master requested a simple outfit to be, planning to disguise himself and keep watch near. He also reminded them to deal with the Siba situation according to his earlier directions. As soon as Feng Yin realized what was happening, she burst into tears, heartbroken that her master was departing once more. Clearly frustrated, urged the other person to blend in and stop acting so strangely. She announced her plans to stay in the kitchens, making it clear she had no intention of leaving. When questioned, she responded with stubborn resolve, then dismissed the other person, urging them to start working. At the same time, his exhaustion apparent, he slowly began to move and his eyes fluttered open. After struggling through the pain, he managed to pull himself up off the ground. The terrifying events of the previous day instantly resurfaced in his mind. He broke down in tears, feeling overwhelmed by the sense that he was no longer pure. Just then, the system announced to young master that he had earned an additional point. Upon hearing the unexpected news, he and Scramble hurried over to examine the panel, their faces filled with bewilderment as they tried to make sense of the sudden appearance of these points and questioned their origin. The system emitted another notification, announcing that the total points had reached 100 million, signifying that the host had successfully completed the objective. The system began its upgrade process, signaling that the host could depart whenever they wished. At the same time, inside the kitchen belonging to the 9 nether demon, the flame-feathered chickens pecked around for food, completely unaware that anything unusual was going on. 2 withered, frightening hands slowly reached toward them, as the chickens, with their fiery feathers sizzled over the heat, finally made his way back into the kitchen. When the old man noticed the boy attempting to quietly return to his room, he quickly demanded to know where the boy had been, pointing out that he had been gone for the entire day. The person looked around in confusion, wondering what had just occurred, before being told to put their clothes on. He paused in silence for a moment before responding in a sorrowful tone that his master had slept with him. The elderly man continued sprinkling spices over the roast, focusing solely on that simple task. He finally began to explain everything in detail. He described how he had gone to the hill behind to gather vegetables, where he unexpectedly encountered an older student from the 10,000 Insects Valley. She seemed to have lost her mind, and seeing him as some valuable source of energy, kept him with her for an entire day and night. The old man's face shifted quickly, revealing a mixture of emotions. After a moment of silence, he let out a deep sigh, thinking to himself that this kid was truly unique. His eyes landed on the roast, and he recalled that flame-plumed chickens were typically reserved for the sect elders. He pointed out that someone had secretly cooked one, and wondered if they weren't worried about severe punishment if the elders discovered what had happened. The old man remained indifferent, unconcerned about the situation. He believed that as long as both of them stayed silent, no one would ever find out. He reasoned that losing just one chicken would go unnoticed. Promising a reward for secrecy, he offered to share half of it, assuring that it would help the other recover from exhaustion. Acted without a moment's pause, silently vowing to keep the secret to himself. The elderly man paused as a sudden memory surfaced, prompting him to mention an additional thought. The next day, she was told to visit the town and purchase more spices because the kitchen supplies were almost gone. She was instructed to return to her room, have her meal, and get some rest afterward. His frail appearance came into view. The elderly man let out a deep sigh, reflecting on how children inevitably grow older and slip beyond one's grasp. Once he finished speaking, the elderly man remembered that Fang Yin had come by earlier. He thought about a friend who needed to work undercover in the area around He Yin. The old man decided that, the next day, someone should come up with a reason to send Fang Yin down the mountain. The old man suddenly exclaimed his surprise that the cult leaders had emerged from their isolation. She understood, as did the heavens and the earth. Both she and her companion shared this knowledge. Yet she wondered if the leader of the cult was also aware. Despite her concern, reassurance settled over her. Despite her age, the cult leader remained just as aggressive and intense as she had always been. Following his master's orders, he had left the mountain earlier that day to purchase some spices. The exhaustion that had weighed him down before had already faded away. That night in his dorm room, he muttered a quiet curse to himself, blaming the witch for his troubles. In his thoughts, he promised that if he ever caught her, he would make certain she regretted crossing his path. Without hesitation, he stuffed the partially cooked chicken into his mouth. He remained unable to get a clear look at the woman's face. No one was there for him to discover. People said that even the weakest member from 10,000 Insects Valley Little began at level 15, so it seemed ridiculous for someone like him, who hadn't even reached level 1, to imagine getting revenge. He eyed the roasted chicken with uncertainty, wondering if it truly had the power to replenish his drain. While Yin ate in a daze, a message echoed in his mind, announcing that the system upgrade was finished. The system then informed him that, as a reward for his years of gathering spirit beads, young master would receive a special gift and asked if he wished to accept it. The user was prompted to press the button, and as they did, the chest slowly unlocked and opened. Hesitated, uncertain about the purpose of the action, but ultimately compelled himself to press the confirm button. The digital treasure chest burst wide, scattering its contents in a sudden eruption. A notification sounded, announcing that young master had been granted 2 additional lives as a reward. In addition, the talent known as Adventure Fragment Synthesis had been unlocked. Excitement and discovery could be found in every corner of the world. People hoped that young master would quickly find his own happiness. Players had the option to use their gathered spirit points to instantly reach level 60 if they wanted to advance immediately. He assessed the situation with a detached mindset, realizing that rapidly increasing to 60 would likely catch unwanted eyes. The thought crossed his mind that such a move might single him out for experimental scrutiny. He wondered if there existed any artifacts or skills capable of concealing his level, but had no idea where such things could be found. At that moment, desperate shouts for help echoed nearby, jolting him out of his thoughts. Dressed in simple clothing and disguised as a young girl, Wu Xian found herself pursued without mercy by a group of bandits. She rushed directly toward, her voice trembling with repeated pleas for assistance. The bandits seemed just moments away from catching her. Hope glimmered in her eyes as she glanced toward, silently wishing he might intervene. A surge of righteous anger filled him as he witnessed men brazenly abducting women in plain sight. He wondered in frustration where the law was during such blatant crimes. Upon noticing that every one of them possessed chiseled 8-pack abs, his knees suddenly felt unsteady. He realized that failing to offer assistance and having others find out would ruin any chance he had of joining the sect of heroes. Still, with no cultivation skills to his name, getting involved would mean certain death. He realized that his only option was to use his points to upgrade. In a single moment, all the money had carefully set aside over the years disappeared. Anger surged within him. He realized that possessing immense strength also meant he had to shoulder important duties. One could think of this as preparing qualifications for entry into the righteous sect. Without warning, his feet lost their grip as soon as he touched down. He lost his balance and fell down the stairs, but determined not to look embarrassed, he quickly regained his composure and stood upright. All 3 of them froze in shock, unable to move. Driven by desperation to protect her, was the first to raise his voice, demanding that the girl be released. The bandits cried out in alarm when they realized their opponent was a cultivator. He responded defensively, pointing out that being so close to the 9 nether demon sect, there was little else he could possibly be. The moment his words left his mouth, the bandits tossed Wu Xian out. They departed in silence, pleading desperately for mercy from the man and offering up the girl in hopes of being spared. Stood in stunned silence, unable to find any words. He tried to process what had just occurred, feeling bewildered by the abruptness of it all. It seemed to be over already, even though he hadn't taken any action himself. The character wondered about the reason behind spending 50 million spirit points on an upgrade. They wondered if simply stating their name would have sufficed. He hurriedly stepped back, signaling that the coast was clear and it was time to return. Wu Xian broke down in tears and flung herself into his embrace. She revealed that her parents, overwhelmed by gambling debts, had taken their own lives, leaving her alone and pursued by relentless debt collectors with no safe place left to turn. The young master became the reason for their rescue, and in gratitude, the person offered to devote themselves to him if he would allow it. There was also the option of getting married on the spot, leaving the decision up to the young master. Felt a pang as his statement struck a sensitive nerve. He assured her there was no reason to help, explaining that he no longer had the ability to accept it. The previous night, after enjoying the roast flame-plumed chicken prepared by the master, an unexpected wave of desire stirred within them in the middle of the night, right when the moment came for them to handle the situation on their own. Every attempt caused a sharp pain to twist through their stomach, making them suspect that someone had placed a hexed bug on them. He no longer considered himself suited for the path of cultivation. The person insisted that repayment wasn't necessary, noting how miserable the other looked. They offered to take them into town first, assuring that they would find a solution together. Wu noticed that made no move to reject her, so she eagerly nodded, silently promising to do as she was told. After journeying for an entire day, the pair at last arrived at the town. Although the hour was late and the shops had already closed, suggested that they look for somewhere to rest and postpone their shopping until the next day. The narrator wondered what would happen to Wu next. He unexpectedly produced a straw mat and offered it, insisting that the other person should use it to sleep while he himself would rest against the wall, suggesting they both endure the night as best they could. He assured her that she would be protected in his presence and gently encouraged her to rest. Wu Xian's anger flared. She questioned whether he had any courage at all, wondering how he could tolerate such treatment. At sunrise, completed the shopping ahead of schedule and expressed his intention to seek out a suitable family who could care for Wu. Wu Xian lunged forward, clinging to him with a pleading look, silently questioning if the young master intended to cast her aside. With hesitation, guided her into the narrow alleyway. The previous day's conversation lingered in the air as he reminded her of his origins in the Nine Nether Demon sect, a place he believed was far too dangerous for someone as innocent as she was. His words were meant to protect her, showing genuine concern for her well-being. Unlike the others, she had a different goal in mind. She intended to earn enough money to secure her freedom from working in the kitchen, and afterwards, she would attempt the Nine Heavens sect entrance exam when the year came to a close. Despite Wu Shan's refusal to let him escape, she feigned vulnerability, acting as if she longed for nothing more than to remain by his side, insisting she wished to be nowhere else. Stood her ground, making it clear she would not agree. She knew all too well that members of the demonic cult showed no hesitation when it came to taking lives. Surrounded by such ruthless and unpredictable people, she imagined every day would feel like walking on a tightrope, never knowing what danger might come next. Abruptly seized his own arm, recalling that the cult strictly prohibited its members from harming one another. This rule offered him some reassurance that his life was not at immediate risk. He remembered that debt collectors were actively searching for him, and he reasoned that remaining hidden within the cult provided him with a safer refuge than facing them alone. The character silently pleaded not to be left alone, found it unbearable to watch her cry. She appeared so sorrowful and fragile that his heart ached with guilt. Ultimately, he found himself compelled to nod in reluctant agreement. Approval from the kitchen steward was required. If he declined, she would have no choice but to send the other person away from the mountain. Without hesitation, Master immediately accepted, mentioning that the kitchen needed more help. She told them they could look after him, explaining that she was leaving to prepare some pickled vegetables. Without another word, the elderly man turned and walked away, never once glancing over his shoulder. He stood there in confusion, surprised by how effortlessly the encounter had ended. Once he regained his composure, he extended a greeting, officially welcoming the newcomer to the kitchen of the Nine Nether Demon sect. Fang Yin observed from her hidden spot, her tense posture easing as she realized the cult leader had managed to sneak in without trouble. With the first part of the plan a success, she knew it was time to proceed to the following step. As darkness settled over the land, quiet enveloped the demon sect. Wu Xian slipped out of bed in silence. She extended her spiritual awareness throughout the compound and noticed that every kitchen room echoed with the sound of people snoring. She transformed back into her real identity as the Nine Nether sect's cult leader and sprang up to the rooftop. Elder Yen stood waiting in silence. Whispers had begun to circulate that he now possessed the Eternal Soul Pearl. It was only a matter of time before the sect's undercover agents took action. At the same time, he emerged from his room. Though exhaustion weighed heavily on him, he decided it was wise to gather additional spirit beads. The memory of having used up 50 million left him with a lingering sense of discomfort. After listening to the report, Wu gave a subtle nod. Over the following days, he planned to have the Eternal Soul Pearl delivered too, making sure that would not grow suspicious. Both of them wondered if they might have shared a technique with him, since when he had rescued her from the bandits, his aura had unmistakably reached the late foundation stage. That night, as she lay beside him, experiencing what the old poets once described as sharing clouds and rain, she realized he possessed no spiritual power whatsoever. She silently wondered if Bo, known as the Immortal, might have taught him a method to conceal his cultivation level. At the same time, gathered spirit fruits with the intention of crafting additional spirit beads. The sound he created caught Wu Xian's eye. She turned away from the elder, making it clear that the conversation was over. She was just on the verge of returning to her own room. Without warning, the intoxicated rush of spring wind, like poison coursing through her blood, surged within her. She cursed her luck, frustrated that it had to happen at that exact moment. Her strength faded, and she collapsed, unable to support herself any longer. She collapsed with force onto the grass next to. Upon spotting her, stopped in his tracks, stiff with surprise. He immediately recognized her as the notorious sorceress from the 10,000 Insects Valley, and inwardly cursed his bad luck at encountering her once more. He immediately faced Ron. Wu Xian reached out with ease and stopped him without any trouble. Once more their paths crossed, and the taller figure regarded the smaller one with a knowing gaze. As midnight settled in, someone noticed a figure wandering aimlessly and questioned what could be troubling the one they teasingly called Mr. Big Sister. Realizing his mistake, decided to give up and stretched himself flat on the ground in submission. The senior sister remained awake as well, and the thought crossed his mind that she might be preparing to torment him once more that night. The person gave permission for the other to proceed. Wu Xian responded with a quiet, amused laugh. He scowled, wondering what was so amusing, and suspected the laughter was at his inability to win. Wu Xian leaned in, her attractive features mere inches away as she held him firmly in place. Amusement danced in her eyes at the thought of destiny, continuously intertwining their paths. Remained unconvinced by the explanation. Deciding it was time to cut the conversation short, he reminded his opponent that time was running out. He revealed that he had also reached the late foundation stage and warned that he would not hesitate to defend himself if provoked. Wu Xian let out a soft laugh, noting that even the clone technique known as the outer body would not endure for much longer that night. Flashed a self-assured smile, certain that he would soon outpace the other's cultivation. In his mind, he was already picturing the moment when their roles would be reversed, and the other would find themselves beneath him. Wu's eyes widened with unexpected astonishment. At that moment, it became clear to her that this man was surprisingly amusing. She grabbed hold of the robe once more and ripped it apart. A mischievous grin appeared on her face as she silently promised to wait for the troublemaker. Following a passionate and exhausting evening, reminiscent of the ancient metaphor of Mount Wu that evoked images of entwined lovers, Wu turned to He, her eyes reflecting a hint of astonishment. Even after everything that happened, the other person remained awake. The speaker truly anticipated the moment when this person would outshine them. Looking weary and full of despair, pleaded for the removal of the parasite inside her. She wondered aloud if she was simply being used as a remedy, and told them there was no need to force the situation each time. Wu gently moved her head from side to side, dismissing her own worries as mere paranoia. She admitted to herself that she preferred to leave traces behind. In her mind, as long as a person kept their innocence, the goo insect would not become active. Whether it was removed or left alone seemed irrelevant to her. At last, managed to see Wu's face without any obstructions. Surprised, he realized how attractive she was and blurted out his thoughts, telling her that she shouldn't hide her eyes behind her hair because it made her appear ghostly. Wu Xian's face turned bright red in an instant. She quickly turned to face him. Although they had shared what cultivators discreetly referred to as dual cultivation, combining their strength and emotions, she believed that didn't give him permission to act so boldly. The speaker warned the other person to keep their connection a secret, insisting that they remain strangers to everyone else. They threatened that if even a single detail was revealed, there would be severe consequences, hinting that the next encounter could be deadly. With an elegant motion, she disappeared from his sight, leaving no trace behind. Released a deep sigh, his body relaxing as relief washed over him. He stood frozen in shock, his mouth falling open at the unexpected scene unfolding before him. The character paused in surprise, noticing the unexpected abundance of spirit beads scattered around. He immediately lunged in their direction, showing no sign of delay. The display before him lit up with a stream of notifications, announcing that he had earned 10,000 points along with an additional fragment from an adventure. His lips curled into a sly smile as he considered the unexpected meeting. He wondered if this encounter might have something to do with her. He thought he should try to run into her again in the future. Regret flickered through his mind as he realized he never got her name. At sunrise, his master summoned him with a sense of urgency, instructing him to come and be introduced to one of the respected elders. The disciple, confident in his abilities, believed that tending to vegetables was his greatest strength, and hoped the elder would allow him to take charge of the task. Acknowledged elder with a chilly nod. The cult leader emerged from her period of isolation. She carefully revealed a plant seed she cherished most, a rare specimen that bloomed just once each century. She passed a glowing sphere to, known as the Eternal Soul Pearl, a revered corset designed to contain limitless life force. Stood motionless, unable to summon the courage to accept the offer. Fang Ying offered a subtle smile, instructing that the item should be carefully protected and nurtured. She warned that if it were lost or harmed, one should be ready to face dire consequences. The warning lingered in the air, emphasizing that even having 10 lives would not be enough to atone for any mistakes that might occur. With hands shaking, reached out and took the pearl. He approached the task with caution, selecting the most fertile section of earth and placing the seed into it with deliberate care. At that moment, Wu, disguised to appear much younger, approached. She noticed brother tending to the garden and asked if he was planting vegetables. He forced a laugh, making a conscious effort to hide his true feelings. He nodded in agreement, feeling too intimidated by Fang Yin's warning to speak further. He himself with loosening the soil, considering taking some home to plant new crops. Wu Yin stifled a laugh behind her hand, amused by the situation, and offered to assist brother He Yin. Side by side, the powerful cult leader and the humble kitchen assistant worked diligently together. Before long, their basket overflowed with freshly picked vegetables. He gave a nod, signaling his agreement, and decided it was time to return and prepare a meal for the group. As he pivoted, his chest collided unexpectedly with a senior sister dressed in green robes. He quickly understood the situation and immediately checked on his fellow disciple to see if they were okay. Internally, he was seized by panic, realizing he had just collided with yet another woman from a demon sect and fearing that she might try to kill him. The woman in green robes stood out from the rest, appearing more approachable. With a gentle motion, she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and offered a small, reassuring smile that let others know she was all right. Wu observed the distant expression that clouded his gaze. He pressed his fingers firmly into the side of his waist, delivering a sharp pinch. Wearing a slight smile, she questioned the expression on his face, teasing him about possibly watching someone else. Responded with an embarrassed grin, trying to reassure her that the girl girl hadn't hurt anyone. Wu stared in silence, unable to find words. The incident had happened by chance, leaving her confused as to why anyone would think she meant to hurt someone. His expression turned grave as he regarded the newcomer. He realized the newcomer had just joined the Nine Nether sect, and likely had no idea how frightening this place could truly be. They had spent their childhood in this place. The narrator recalled witnessing students clash fiercely, their conflict escalating to deadly levels, all because of a single chicken leg. Female disciples got into heated fights, quarreling over inexpensive rouge. The people from the demon sect were known for their irrational thinking. Reasoning with them was pointless. Even the smallest disagreement could quickly escalate into a deadly conflict. Survival was the only rule that truly mattered. If someone stayed alive, they hadn't crossed any lines. The speaker advised maintaining a safe distance if an encounter with those individuals occurred, making sure the warning was understood. The person admitted to being the one who introduced her to the demon sect, feeling it was their duty to look after her. They promised that after earning enough to secure their own freedom, they would help her escape and join the righteous factions. When Wu heard this, she looked up with wide, hopeful eyes, her expression brightening as she expressed her excitement and eagerness for that day to come. Its reliability seemed unquestionable to those around him, but beneath her composed exterior she mocked him silently. In her thoughts, she scoffed at the idea that her toy could ever hope to escape. Whether he lived or died, he belonged to her alone. Just before, discovered that after he finally gathered enough money to buy back his freedom, he intended to depart from the sect. When she stepped back into the kitchen, she subtly expressed her discomfort to Master C, mentioning that staying idle for several days made her feel unsettled. The character asked if there were any tasks available for them. The elderly man swallowed hard. He let out a forced laugh, insisting there was nothing important. Wu Xian's face grew somber, realizing she was being treated as if she were only taking advantage of others' generosity. Quickly spoke up, suggesting to the master that could assist him. He explained that he had recently begun learning how to cook and needed someone to help cut the vegetables. Siyu responded with an enthusiastic nod, clearly agreeing that the suggestion was a smart one. Wu's expression brightened, revealing her satisfaction with the choice that had been made. At that moment, a woman dressed in green stepped into the kitchen. Master C, who served as the narrator's teacher, was preparing to entertain visitors that evening. They were expected to encounter a chef at the Hall of Joy. Immediately realized who she was. It was the very woman he had accidentally run into by the garden gate earlier. The boss thoughtfully stroked his chin as he considered the situation. He recalled that the sect master of the Shun branch had a fondness for spicy dishes. With this in mind, he began to think about who among his people would be the best fit for the task. Noticed the woman's gaze settle on her. She proposed that the young chef should be given the responsibility. The character hesitated, clearly reluctant, while another noticed the change and asked with concern if something was bothering them. His hands fluttered with uncertainty as he tried to explain himself. He insisted that it wasn't what others might think, admitting he had only just begun learning how to cook and didn't feel deserving of preparing a meal for someone as important as a sect master. The woman offered a warm smile, her decision clear. She was content with the arrangement and made her way to wait in the courtyard, and Wu trailed behind her as she led them to the Hall of Joy. Yet the sounds of moaning and wailing that filled the air caused him to feel a sense of discomfort. The woman let out a soft laugh, revealing that the mistress of the hall specialized in arts, a form of dual cultivation centered on mutual enjoyment and the exchange of spiritual energy. She seemed surprised that this information was not already known. He forced a strained smile onto his face, recalling the rumors he had heard. In the middle of the day, he observed how openly shameless these people acted, the thought running through his mind. Before long, they arrived at the rear kitchen. The woman gently placed her hand on Wu Xian's head, instructing her to prepare the vegetables in that spot. She explained that she would guide the young chef to the wine cellar to retrieve the sect master's beverage. She glanced over her shoulder, a gentle smile appearing on her lips, and silently gestured for the young chef to follow her. Once the pair had departed, Wu Xian let out a quiet sigh. She thought back to their accidental encounter in the garden, which had led her to appoint him as the chef. Now, she found herself guiding him down to the cellar. It seemed either destiny had orchestrated these events, or someone had arranged them with such precision that chance was out of the question. The setting moved to an underground wine cellar. After some time spent walking, the woman raised her lantern in his direction, asking the young chef if he would carry it for her. With smooth confidence, she reached for the closest door and swung it open. After entered, she quickly secured the door behind both of them. He spun around, noticing the abundance of wine and wondering how much they were expected to take, directing his question towards Sister Ding. The woman responded with a mysterious smile, her spiritual energy swirling as she released a cloud of glowing butterflies into the air. She reassured assured the young chef that there was no need to hurry, since they had all the time they needed. As soon as the butterflies touched him, knees buckled beneath him. The woman leaned in, narrowing the distance until her face hovered just a few inches from his own. Despite her efforts, an unsettling sense lingered. Something was amiss. The spell, which should have easily ensnared him, had no effect. She questioned why the Ha technique failed to influence him as expected. At the same time, he remained oblivious to her intentions, only noticing her hand lifting to his chin. Confusion flickered across his mind as he wondered if she intended to suggest dual cultivation. Driven by that idea, the woman increased the strength of her energy. The thick fumes forced into a fit of harsh coughing. Frustration welled up inside him as he realized he was being made to inhale her lingering spiritual smoke. As the man began to cough and hack, the woman stopped in her tracks, stunned. Confusion flickered across her face as she realized he was unaffected, somehow immune. She recognized that individuals with resilient minds were difficult to influence. Realizing she lacked a necessary trigger, she decided she would need to rely on her allure to rouse the hidden shadow within. The woman moved in swiftly, her breath coming in quiet gasps. She reminded that they were alone together, hinting that now was the perfect moment for something exciting to happen between them. Realizing that she meant what she said, quickly retreated. He admitted inwardly that he had never studied Sister Ding's fundamental skills, and that the method requiring close contact would not suit him. The thought crossed his mind that attempting it could even be fatal. If the speaker were to collapse and die on the spot, the other person would never be able to justify what had happened. She paid him no attention, treating him as nothing more than another disciple. In her mind, a question echoed: was she truly beautiful? He gave a reluctant nod, lacking any real enthusiasm. In his mind, he scoffed at the idea of beauty, feeling certain that the so-called beauty was nothing more than another one of her smoke and mirrors tricks designed to manipulate him. The witch from the Valley of 10,000 Insects had already taken everything from him, leaving him completely empty and untouched by any earthly longing. She leaned closer to him, noticing his tension and questioning whether he was feeling shy or if he simply did not like her. Showing no emotion, he calmly inquired about the location of the wine from Sister Ding. The words left a sharp sting, highlighting how, within the Hall of Joy, the elders focused solely on advancing their cultivation, never on genuine honesty. They longed to possess the other person's heart, reached his breaking point, and forcefully pushed her away. He explained that it wasn't a matter of unwillingness to dual cultivate, but rather an inability to do so, urging her to seek another partner. He turned around, wondering which wine liked best, and asked for assistance in finding it. The search led to a jar of wine, which was intended for making soup. She suddenly asked a question that cut straight to the heart, wondering aloud if the young chef had ever experienced intimacy. His expression turned somber as the question struck a nerve, making her feel it was too private to respond. While she hesitated, her companion silently weighed the situation. His legs grew weak beneath him, a sign that he had, in fact, breathed in the vapors. Yet, despite the growing temptation, he remained steadfast. It became clear to her that the technique was losing its power. A person could withstand the influence of the arts only if their heart remained completely pure. At that moment, as wondered about the man's true character, a sudden glint of gold caught his eye and drew his focus away. A golden spirit bead lay concealed amidst the collection of wine jars. He felt a surge of excitement as he secured the prize. His total increased by 5,000 points, and he received a bonus for stumbling upon this unexpected opportunity. 2 new pieces of the adventure were now his. He rose to his feet, searching the room for Sister Ding, and wondering aloud about the location of the wine she had talked about earlier. She continued to gaze at him in silence, prompting him to repeat his question. They wondered if their visit was meant for tasting wine. With a sense of resignation, she slipped her hand around his arm and guided him forward. She reached for a jar, demonstrating her impressive tolerance for alcohol, while expecting the others to carry 2 additional jars. They emerged from the cellar, yet the woman's uncertainty grew stronger. She wondered about the abrupt gossip claiming the eternal soul pearl was in his possession. Was it just a clever diversion? If the arts failed to influence him, she considered that his thoughts must be exceptionally clear, making him unfit for the 9 nether sect. A sense of unease washed over them as they sensed that something was amiss, and determination sparked within as they resolved to uncover the truth behind the mystery. At the same time, Payan reflected on having gathered 3 fragments so far. They realized that just one more unexpected meeting could allow them to combine these into a new talent. This made Payan consider that opportunities often arise when stepping beyond familiar habits. Appeared to have relied on the arts, for nothing else could explain why weakness suddenly their legs. Breaking away from the usual pattern, the character soon stumbled upon a golden spirit bead, which set off an unexpected opportunity. The narrator reflected that simply remaining in the kitchen without exploring new places or participating in different activities would greatly limit the opportunities for unexpected meetings. He trailed behind Ding Ding as she returned to the kitchen. Once she had placed the wine on the counter, she told him that the dishes would begin to be served during the dog hour, typically between 7 and 9 in the evening. She reminded him not to forget this, and he assured her that he and the others would handle everything, addressing her as Sister Ding. Upon hearing the commotion, Wu emerged from inside and noticed had returned. The sound of a bell signaled that it was time to check the clock, and the person departed, leaving the other to handle things alone. At the doorway, she paused and glanced over her shoulder, expressing her belief that he was a kind person, and suggesting they spend time together on an outing in 2 days. Without hesitation, accepted immediately. A trip outside signaled the arrival of a new territory to explore. Because there was a strict rule forbidding disciples from harming each other, safety was assured. Additionally, the strange parasite from the witch prevented the arts from having any effect on him. Feeling optimistic, they decided to go. Wu Xian seethed inwardly, feeling a surge of irritation at the thought of the boy daring to accept an invitation from another girl. Ding Ding smiled brightly, feeling satisfied with the decision. The plan was now set. Ding Ding would head to the kitchen in 2 days. Wu Xian stormed away, clearly frustrated. He called out to her, asking if Little wanted to join them as well. Wu grabbed her cleaver and swiftly sliced the carrot into 2 neat pieces. She replied in a chilly tone that she was not invited. At that moment, the blade sliced through the air, gliding swiftly across the board. His attention moved elsewhere as he noticed the preparations were already complete, surprised by how quickly everything had been finished. Wu felt a surge of anger as He's laid-back confidence took her by surprise. She hadn't anticipated that he would be so skilled. She made it clear through her expression that she was in no mood for conversation, her frustration obvious to anyone paying attention. She considered ending his life right then and there, but the danger of exposing her true identity held her back. Remained completely unaware, simply moving over to the stove. He acknowledged the effort put in and insisted on taking charge of the stir-fry himself. Once they had finished their flurry of cooking, the pair made their way back to the kitchen area. The door crashed shut with a thunderous bang as Wu Xian forcefully closed it. As soon as it was created, Master Si became aware of a threatening presence around him. The master urgently questioned his disciple about what had happened to her. Inside, the disciple was clueless, unable to offer any explanation. Throughout their journey home, she had worn an expression as dark and troubled as a gathering storm. The elderly man placed a weary hand on the young man's shoulder, silently acknowledging that the young man would have to face what lay ahead without any further guidance. Inside her room, Wu trembled with fury, questioning how she had found herself stuck with someone so completely clueless. At that moment, the window eased open with a soft creaking sound. A bright voice announced the arrival of someone addressing the lady, letting her know they had come. Just moments later, Yin found herself wedged tightly in the middle of the window frame, unable to move forward or backward. Wu remained indoors. As the acting sect master's assistant, he was expected to behave more appropriately, yet his actions fell short of that standard. The situation had already become too dramatic, but Fang continued to exaggerate her behavior. Upon hearing her summons, he hurried to her side without delay. Wu Xian reached down and tugged at the hem of her dress, which had become caught in the doorway. She glanced at Yin, silently questioning whether anyone had trailed behind them. Yin responded with a quick shake of her head, signaling that the coast was clear. He waited for her command, curious about their next target and wondering which group would meet its end at her direction. The narrator wondered if anyone was familiar with Ding Ning from the Hall of Joy. Paused to reflect, recalling that she had been Master Shun's most trusted student, having become part of his discipleship more than a decade earlier. There was suspicion about her true identity. Wu Xian gave a small nod, silently acknowledging the uncertainty, though there was still no concrete evidence to confirm it. They were instructed to investigate further. As the true events unfolding within the Nine, Nether Hall needed to be uncovered. Fang noticed Yin's hesitation. She knew the Eternal Soul Pearl was Fang's most cherished treasure, and she wondered if he was really comfortable allowing to hold on to it. Wu dismissed the worry with a casual gesture, believing that the item would be of no value to anyone else, even if it were taken. Nobody truly understands its nature, except perhaps when it ends up with that ageless outcast from the Nine Heaven sect. At the same time, he gazed at the Eternal Soul Pearl, puzzled by its mysterious presence. He wondered aloud if what he held was truly a seed. Despite his doubts, he obeyed instructions and hid it in a flower pot. He knew that the acting sect master's word was the final authority. A fresh dilemma arose in his mind as he wondered about the best place to store something so valuable. He realized he couldn't simply leave it lying around carelessly. After pausing to consider his options, an idea suddenly came to him. He realized that hiding something in the most obvious spot would make it the least likely to be discovered. With a sly smile, he tucked the item into a flower pot sitting on the windowsill. The choice made perfect sense to him. He wondered aloud who among the demon sect would ever find themselves so idle as to take the sect leader's vegetables. Feeling content, he let his worries fade and dropped onto his bed, finally allowing himself to relax. By the time morning arrived, the kitchen staff moved quickly and energetically through their chores. True to his word, Ding Ning showed up at dawn, his face beaming as he offered a cheerful greeting. Master C was informed that the little chef had been invited for a brief trip, and a request was made to have him join for a while. Simply gestured toward, indicating that any questions should be directed to him. Gave a quick confident nod, signaling his agreement and readiness to move forward. As she watched him depart with Ding Ning, Si Yubal leaned in toward her, quietly suggesting that she should consider following as well. Wu's expression clouded over in an instant. She wondered why this man would pick such an inconvenient moment to bring up his request. The idea of interrupting their date held no appeal for her. She spun around in anger, her frustration clear. Deciding it wasn't worth arguing, she resolved to return to bed, determined to let sleep claim her once more. The scene shifted as Hai and Ding Ning arrived at a quiet, hidden spot within the sect's grounds. Sunlight streamed gently through the leaves, making the area appear peaceful and beautiful. The pleasant weather brought a smile to Ding Ning's face, who suggested they take a moment to unwind and appreciate the serene surroundings. His thoughts were consumed by a single desire. He longed for spirit beads and unexpected opportunities, wondering anxiously where they might be concealed. Ding Ding, feeling restless, tapped the grass at her side as she glanced at Little Chef. She wondered aloud if his legs were tired and urged him to join her, inviting him to sit close by. Inside, Sister Ding questioned whether he was truly being invited out simply because he was a decent person. He thought to himself that in this sect, trusting the words of a demon would make him the real fool. He calmly encouraged the other person to speak their mind, assuring them that he would help if possible. But if he couldn't, there was nothing he could do. Ding Ning abandoned his act and moved in until their faces were nearly touching. He reminded the other person that on that day, he had used the art on them, but they hadn't responded at all. This showed that their thoughts remained innocent and untainted. The technique reached its full potential only when both individuals' feelings resonated with each other. If the connection was shared, their combined cultivation held true significance. She looked at him intently, recalling how she had invited him out and he hadn't turned her down, which made her wonder if he might also have feelings for her. Both the man's eagerness and the woman's stirred emotions suggested that they could easily ascend together into a world of happiness and delight. Appeared completely indifferent to what was presented. In her mind, what her sister suggested seemed far too ordinary. The speaker looked around with curiosity, hoping to find something unique, an item unlike anything they had encountered before. Bing Ming's smile suddenly stiffened at those words, revealing that he might not be as blameless as he appeared. It was typical. Not a single person in the demon sect could be considered innocent. He likely believed the wine cellar lacked enough corruption for his tastes, and now he craved an experience even more outrageous. Viewed the situation from a different perspective. He wondered if this meeting could turn into another unexpected event. He believed that if he managed to initiate something significant, he might receive some sort of reward. Since he lacked the necessary ability to influence the outcome, he felt indifferent to whatever actions she might take. Ding Ning, caught up in his own excitement, misunderstood the situation and spoke in a hushed, eager tone, assuring that no matter how unusual her preferences were, he would gladly go along with them. In response, blinked uncertainly, admitting her lack of experience and deciding to let him take charge. Ding Ming offered a gentle smile, her expression warm and inviting, yet her mind was already set. She resolved that if he desired mischief, she would gladly meet his expectations. She rose to her feet with deliberate slowness, a faint smile playing on her lips as she regarded the young cook with amusement. She instructed him to remain where he was, explaining that she needed some time to get ready. Her fingers moved over the fabric of her robe as she looked for an object. Soon, she pulled out a lengthy strand of deep red thread. She curled it around her fingers and gave a flirtatious smile, silently inviting him to join in her playful games. Eyes sparkled with excitement as something truly unusual caught her attention. She recognized the rarity of the skill before her, sensing that a stroke of good fortune was just around the corner. Noticing the look of happiness on his face, Ding Ning felt a surge of contempt deep inside. In her mind, she dismissed him as nothing more than a depraved member of the demon race, corrupt and driven by lust. With a swift motion, she snapped her wrist. In the blink of an eye, a crimson thread darted forward and wrapped itself securely around, trapping her without warning. Emerging from the darkness, Wu clenched her jaw, fury simmering within her. Her thoughts churned with anger as she watched him, already considering him hers, yet he was out flirting and acting shamelessly. The sight filled her with fury, and she decided that such behavior was beyond pardon, warranting not just death but everlasting punishment. While Ding Ning crouched next to the restrained, her voice took on an overly sweet quality as she spoke. She asked if was interested in something even more daring, and immediately agreed without any sign of reluctance. Ding Ning wondered to herself why there was no reaction from others, questioning if tying people up was just an everyday occurrence in this time period. Then she remembered that belonged to the Hall of Joy, where such rope techniques were likely a routine part of their activities. Solemnly, he announced to Sister Ding that he was prepared, his mind cleared of all distractions and his commitment unwavering. He invited her to proceed, lying there bound and presenting himself as if he were a devoted sacrifice to destiny. Ding Ming couldn't help but laugh out loud, finding the situation amusing. He thought to himself how funny it was, and realized that if he had known about this interest earlier, he would have shared the information back when they were in the wine cellar. From her vantage point atop the hill, Wu Xian's expression grew stormy as she observed Ding Ning's hands moving restlessly. She could hardly believe it. Ding Ning was already beginning. The characters strained to catch what was being said below, but the words remained inaudible. Frustration flickered across their face as they observed the other person's brazen expression, finding it unbelievably shameless. Reflecting on the past, they realized that even during their time together, that person had never behaved with such blatant impropriety. Sensing that the moment was right, Ding Ning rose to his feet and offered a subtle smile, silently telling himself that he was ready to approach his junior. She concentrated her spiritual power, a frosty glint shining in her eyes. With a gentle, almost melodic tone, she invoked the third form known as the voice of desire. This technique compelled anyone with lesser cultivation to reveal their secrets. With a single breath, she knew he would surrender to its influence. A surge of violet energy raced through the air in its direction. The moment the substance coursed through him, a haze clouded his thoughts and his vision blurred. Confusion swept over him as he struggled to remember where he was, his voice barely audible as he questioned his surroundings. Ding Ding let out a light-hearted laugh, feeling as though they had arrived in a true paradise alongside her younger companion. She wondered if there were any secrets he still kept from her, hinting that if he revealed them, his older sister would reward him with unique aims. He Yen responded with a bright smile, assuring that she had many secrets and was eager to share every single one. Introduced himself, uncertain whether he truly belonged to this world or another. As a child, he had been sold into the demon sect, yet his heart remained steadfastly just. Determined to rise above his circumstances, he set his sights on joining the righteous sect in the future. Despite everything, considered himself a person who chose to do good. Reached her breaking point and decided she couldn't take it anymore. She made it clear that she had had enough. Frustration filled her as she clarified that this wasn't the sort of secret she had been asking for. She wondered aloud what kind of foolishness was being said. What she truly wanted was something much more profound, like the mysterious eternal soul pearl. Blinked in surprise, silently admitting to himself that he had never visited an eternal soul pearl before, and feeling a bit uneasy about it. She gazed at him in disbelief, wondering if he was pretending not to understand her. Hidden away in the darkness above, Wu was seething with anger. She silently fumed at the audacity of the man below, thinking him a brazen scoundrel. Since he couldn't use his body, he had resorted to using his words instead. She begrudgingly admitted that his resourcefulness was impressive, but she couldn't decide whether he deserved praise or punishment. Without warning, an intense ache shot through her chest. Despite her desperate attempts to restrain it, a thick stream of crimson blood escaped from her lips. She dropped to her knees, struggling for breath. The thought raced through her mind. This was happening once more. The strange, dizzying effect of the flower moon spell cast by Tai, mixed with the intoxicating winds of spring, had struck her again. This cursed combination acted like a double dose of poison, flaring up without warning. The pain hit her at random, always catching her off guard, especially when ancient enemies lingered nearby. Once their strength returned, they vowed to seek revenge against each person responsible. The intense pain in her chest caused her eyesight to grow hazy. At that moment, he slowly regained consciousness and looked around in confusion, searching for Sister Ding and trying to understand what had just occurred. He glanced upward and noticed that her complexion had turned pale, her body shaking slightly as if she might collapse at any moment. He wondered with concern if Sister Ding was all right. A sudden ringing echoed, signaling a loss of control. Confusion filled the air as someone demanded to know the stranger's identity, their voice sharp with urgency and suspicion. Still reeling from the relentless shaking, he and Shover instinctively recoiled, overwhelmed by a rush of dizziness that made his head spin. She persisted relentlessly, demanding to know the location of the eternal soul pearl. She insisted that he was hiding it. Completely confused, he wondered what was happening. He had only gone out hoping for an unexpected meeting, but instead, he encountered someone wildly accusing him of stealing something. He rose to his feet and brushed the dust from his clothes, acknowledging that he and Sister Ding simply did not get along, and suggesting they end things there. As soon as Ding Ning noticed him starting to walk away, her gaze hardened with determination. Realizing he had overheard her talking about the eternal soul pearl, she knew she couldn't allow him to escape. She sprang forward in in an instant, her blade slicing through the air as it aimed directly at its neck. Just as she was about to complete her attack, a small stone shot out from the woods and struck her directly on the forehead. The sudden impact stopped her movement instantly. A sudden sound echoed as everything came to a halt. It became clear that someone had stepped in to shield him. A sudden thought struck her. Perhaps he had never been influenced by her charm spell. Maybe he had pretended the entire time. Hidden in the darkness, scowled to himself, realizing that the boy was no ordinary kitchen helper. He understood that the whispers about the eternal soul pearl being in the boy's possession were entirely unfounded. Determined not to reveal their true identity, the character decided to wait for a better moment to get revenge. At the same time, he stared in surprise at the deserted clearing, unable to believe how quickly the Hall of Joy members disappeared once there was nothing left to gain. Without the promise of dual cultivation or other advantages, they vanished without so much as a farewell. He scanned the surrounding woods, determination flickering in his eyes. The thought of returning without finding anything weighed on him. It simply wasn't an option. Realizing he had yet to search this part of the forest, he wondered if a few spirit orbs might still be hidden nearby. It was time to focus on farming with determination. As he prepared to get to work, a faint sound of movement caught his attention from afar. Drawing on lessons from the past, he crouched down and moved stealthily ahead, convinced that Sister Ding believed she had already escaped him. However, as he looked through the blades of grass, he realized that the creature lying there was not Ding Ding. Wu Xian stood before him, the fiery spirit he cherished most. He stopped in his tracks, panic flashing through his mind. It dawned on him that she must have been following him all along. No matter where he went, she always seemed to appear out of nowhere, as if she were shadowing his every move. He knelt down, worry etched on his face, and asked if the other person was all right. Wu Xian shot a sharp look upward at him, her expression clearly conveying her earlier warning to leave. Came to an abrupt halt, admitting defeat. He hurriedly agreed to leave, expressing a genuine desire to stay, but acknowledged that if he didn't go, she would completely exhaust him once more. Believing that everything appeared to be all right, the person decided it was time to leave. As he began to walk away, Wu's lips started to quiver with emotion. She felt a surge of disbelief and hurt, wondering how he could simply leave after she had just saved him. In her mind, she thought that if it weren't for her intervention, Ding Ning would have ended his life, and yet he seemed completely ungrateful. Yin hesitated, unable to force himself to leave. Letting out a resigned sigh, he turned around, silently accepting that he would stay after all. He helped her to her feet, quietly wondering aloud what would become of the poisoned bug inside him if she were to die. Wu Xian's temper sparked, making it clear that she didn't believe the concern was genuine. He had firmly stated that there was no conflict between them. He pointed out that she had been providing him with food and had never tried to exploit him. The least he could do, he thought, was to make sure she stayed safe. He urged her to let him assist her. She immediately responded with cold defiance, making it clear that she wanted no sympathy from him. She insisted that his help was no longer required and expressed her frustration, declaring she was tired of him. He was now inside. Deciding to settle things, he agreed to leave it at that. He resolved not to disturb the other person or bring up the subject of getting rid of the bug. Just as he began to walk away, Wu Xian suddenly lost his balance and doubled over, a harsh cough forcing a surge of dark red blood from his mouth. The vivid liquid splattered across the grass, streaking it with color as if someone had flung paint onto the ground. Froze where he stood when he heard her fall to the ground. Released a heavy sigh, growing frustrated as Wu Xian remained motionless, feigning unconsciousness once again. Despite exasperation, Wu Xian continued to lie still, completely unresponsive, resembling a lifeless body. He muttered helplessly, reminding them that they had faced similar situations before. Wanting to get things over with, he urged everyone to finish quickly. He couldn't understand why the other person insisted on being so stubborn, as if they needed to prove a point. Even though helping wasn't something they wanted to do, their conscience refused to let them walk away. Except for a single incident, the other person had never truly caused them harm. Watching someone die right before their eyes was something they simply couldn't allow. He let out a grunt as he bent down and lifted her to her feet. Wu shot him a fierce look, her eyes sharp with warning, as if threatening to lash out if he pushed her any further. However, responded with nothing more than a confident smirk, clearly unfazed. He seemed to remind her that she was the one nearly at her limit, while he remained perfectly composed. At last, she let go of her pride. Deciding there was no need for more words, she stared ahead with a chilling resolve, silently urging action instead of conversation. He raised her chin with determination, a rebellious glint shining in his gaze. Her bold and almost magical confidence stirred an unexpected feeling inside him. Because she was the one making the request, he silently decided she should be the one to guide the situation. Her fate was now her own responsibility, and if things went wrong, he would not accept any blame. Wu, who held the position of cult leader, struggled to endure the shame that was forced upon her. Although venomous emotions churned within her, she forced herself to set aside her pride and focused all her spiritual energy with unwavering intensity. He furrowed his brow, wondering why there was such quiet tension. He thought that it was important to take a deep breath and let go of the stress. Her cheeks grew red with a mix of fury and shame as she reached out and seized him by the throat. Without hesitation, she warned him with a fierce glare that if he spoke again, she wouldn't hesitate to choke him. Responded with a mischievous smile, showing no sign of fear. He seemed amused, as if surprised that the other person enjoyed such situations. Following an intense battle, the venom that had been surging through Wu Xian's veins was at last brought under control. This time, however, she noticed that Yi's physical abilities seemed far stronger than before. As the effects of the toxin faded, her body gradually diminished in size, reverting to a more youthful appearance. At the same time, he sat beside roasted fish near the campfire, irritation flickering across his face. Another half-day had slipped by with nothing to show for it. He realized he would need to gather additional spirit orbs that night, holding on to the hope that he might stumble upon another rare event. They spun around, only to find that Wu had disappeared. She had simply walked away without a word of farewell. It struck them that to her, they must have been nothing more than something to be used and discarded. He dismissed the situation with a shrug and took a hearty bite of his steaming grilled fish, thinking to himself that it was someone else's loss, which simply meant there was more delicious food left for him. A recognizable chime resonated within his mind, signaling the arrival of a message from the system. It informed him that he had just received 2 more fate fragments, bringing his collection to a total of 5. The system then prompted him with a question, asking if he wished to combine them to create a new talent. He quickly pressed the confirmation button, not pausing to think twice. The pieces rose out of the darkness, coming together as beams of light spun around them. The system's voice echoed, offering its congratulations to young master for acquiring a new talent. It informed him that he now possessed the ability known as Corpse Explosion, with an area of effect spanning 2 meters. His expression twisted in disbelief at this news. He thought to himself that Corpse Explosion sounded incredibly sinister, almost as if evil was built into the name itself. He wondered how he could ever hope to join any righteous sect when burdened with such a dark ability. He couldn't deny its usefulness, realizing it would be ideal for erasing any traces left behind. As he considered its versatility, he noted to himself that, if necessary, it could even serve as a makeshift bong. In the end, he figured that having more abilities simply meant having more choices. They wondered what they had to work with now. The status panel suddenly illuminated, displaying information for all to see. It revealed a level of 20 alongside 50 million points. The first talent listed was the ability to have double lives, while the second talent granted the power to make corpses explode. He extended his limbs with a slow, relaxed motion, but quickly reminded himself there was no room for idleness. With renewed focus, he returned to the task of gathering spirit orbs. Drawing in a steady breath, he let the gathered power flow outward, snuffing out the campfire instantly with one controlled surge. Without glancing behind him, he marched confidently into the shadowy depths of the forest. Following a lengthy walk, a faint sparkle caught their attention in the distance. A multitude of glowing spirit orbs drifted between the trees, casting a gentle illumination over the jungle and making it shimmer like a field of fireflies. He and Grind sprang into action, swiftly gathering every single one with an intensity that made it seem as though he was driven by an unstoppable force. He instructed the system to calculate the total. The system responded by congratulating young master on his impressive accomplishment. It informed him that he had earned a total of 1 million points within just one haul, unlocking a new achievement. As a reward, he received 2 more fragments of fate. While enjoyed the excitement of his successful journey, a deep growl echoed from behind. A pack of demonic wolves crept closer to his side. He had expected as much. In his experience, rewards rarely came without a price. With no other options left, the character resolved not to let this place become their grave. The character requested to be advanced directly to level 60. In a flash, an overwhelming wave of spiritual energy burst from inside him, saturating the atmosphere nearby as his level soared to 60 almost instantly. The demonic wolves charged it together, their movements perfectly coordinated. Their sharp fangs were exposed, and their eyes shone with a menacing red light. Despite their movements appearing almost sluggish, he effortlessly struck one of the wolves with a relaxed punch, causing its skull to explode into a bloody mist. He turned with practiced ease, unleashing a powerful attack that shattered another creature. The trio of wolves proved no match for his enhanced strength. With a single powerful punch, he launched one wolf backward into the others, disrupting their advance as if they were bowling pins knocked apart. As he set out, the force of a corpse explosion erupted, his words booming with the power of thunder. In an instant, the bodies of the defeated wolves erupted in flashes of red light. As the number of fallen creatures increased, increased, he wore a crazed grin and relentlessly activated his skill without pause. Given his present strength, these weak monsters no longer posed any challenge for him. As the final echo of the howl disappeared, the system's bright voice rang out, announcing its achievement. It informed him that he had successfully triggered Corpse Explosion for the first time, wiping out 209 wolves in the process. The reward totaled 200,000 points and a single fragment of fate. Eyes widened in surprise before amusement bubbled up, and he began to chuckle, realizing the system was more impressive than he'd imagined. He found himself warming up to his unexpected companion, and then something changed abruptly. The atmosphere thickened, pressing down on the woods as a suffocating presence drifted among the trees. A huge wolf stepped out from the darkness, its coat as dark as midnight and a bright red mark shining ominously on its forehead. The system issued a warning about a level 30 alpha. In response, the creature let out a thunderous roar and unleashed its natural ability, causing powerful shockwaves to ripple through the surrounding forest. Felt a sudden pang of anxiety, but his worry faded when he noticed the number floating above the creature's head. A small, confident smile appeared on his face as he realized that, at his current level, he could handle this threat, unlike before, when facing such an opponent would have meant certain defeat. Although luck was not on the other's side, the speaker stood confidently at level 60. He cracked his knuckles and flashed a wide grin, aware that he possessed two combined talents. Deciding it was time to give his all, he resolved to stop holding anything back. Unaware of the depths of Ian's power, the Alpha lunged forward, its massive paws thundering against the ground and its mouth gaping, ready to rip him to shreds. Despite the 30-level difference between them, he remained completely unfazed. He lifted his hand and gave a quick, effortless snap of his finger. A powerful shockwave erupted, launching the Alpha high into the air as if it weighed nothing at all. Even without wielding a weapon or summoning any energy, a simple flick had been enough to hurl the Alpha away like a limp doll. The system announced Master's easy victory over the boss with a congratulatory message. The system emitted a cheerful sound, announcing that young Master had easily overcome the chief. His lips curved into a satisfied smile as he patiently anticipated the reward he knew was coming. Still, there was no response. He let out a low groan. Instead of offering congratulations to young Master for earning 2 adventure shards, he chose to tease him, questioning why he seemed unable to accept a simple compliment. She decided to inspect his body on her own. Although he had defeated the chief, no message appeared about collecting loot, so he chose to search the body himself. To his astonishment, the chief released a spirit orb unlike any he had encountered before. This one glowed with a deep red hue. A system notification appeared, announcing that 300,000 points had been added to the score. An adventure event had begun, and 2 adventure shards were awarded as a result. A gentle prompt appeared, asking if young Master wished to create a new talent through synthesis. He let out a weary sigh, silently wishing that in the future, actions would speak louder than words, and things would simply get done without seeking permission first. From out of the emptiness, a pair of fragments emerged and fused together in an instant. A new ability was gained, called Know-It-All, granting the user the chance to ask for information twice each day. Recognizing that this ability allowed for the discovery of anything, gave a satisfied nod. Since nobody else was around and morning was on the horizon, he chose to get some sleep. When he made his way back to the kitchen area, daylight had already broken across the sky. He carefully poured water over the seed gifted to him by the cult leader, quietly questioning whether it would ever grow. Without warning, the scent of herbal remedies drifted through the air. He glanced to the side, noticing his master carefully tending to a pot of medicine bubbling on the stove. Bo noticed concern in the master's eyes and wondered if the master felt unwell. The master shook his head, assuring Bo that he was fine. He then instructed Bo to keep an eye on the fire now that he had arrived. The medicine was meant for Young, who had fallen ill. After it was prepared, the task would be to deliver it to her. Reacted with surprise, having just learned about sickness, and wondered what sort of illness she was suffering from. Bo stated in an even tone that it was merely a regular cold. However, inwardly, she complained that it was actually a recurrence of spring fever. She knew her internal wounds had not yet mended, and she blamed the other person for lacking the endurance needed to prevent this. He nevertheless found himself drawn to the strange qualities the boy possessed. Each day, the color returned to his face, showing clear signs of recovery. Considering the torment inflicted by the cult leader, he ought to have been barely clinging to life. Strangely, it almost seemed as if someone else had suffered in his place, taking on the exhaustion meant for him. After completed preparing the medicine for delivery, Kaibo let out a quiet sigh, reflecting inwardly on the remarkable toughness of youth and wishing he had pushed himself harder during his own younger days. The entrance to Wu's room stayed firmly closed. Despite his repeated knocking, silence greeted him each time. Yen announced his presence, letting Little know he had come with medicine, but still there was no reply. After a lengthy period without any reply, he eventually sighed and decided to open the door himself. Inside the room, he discovered Wu, who had returned to her youthful appearance and remained soundly asleep. She remained still, her breaths coming in faint, uneven patterns, hurried over and placed the bowl of medicine on the nearby table. He leaned closer and placed his hand against her forehead, his face growing tense with worry. Realizing how hot she felt, he understood immediately that this was more than a simple cold. She was running a high fever. At that moment, Wu Xian's eyelids fluttered open, and with a faint, trembling voice, she mentioned that someone had interfered with her medicine. He paused, uncertain, questioning whether a simple remedy for chills would really help. Despite his doubts, her persistent urging left him with no choice but to let out a resigned sigh. He gently assisted her as she sat upright, then personally gave her the medicine. For reasons unknown, perhaps a lack of strength or a sudden wave of embarrassment, she accidentally tipped the bowl, causing half its contents to cascade down the front of her shirt. He stood paralyzed, his mind racing with silent pleas for himself to avert his gaze, reminding himself that a gentleman ought to show restraint. He swiftly produced a cloth and carefully cleaned the spilled medicine from her robe, offering her quiet reassurance. He encouraged her to rest, promising that he would gather herbs to help bring down her fever. As Wu watched him walk away, a puzzled expression crossed her face. The atmosphere surrounding him seemed to have shifted dramatically. He now radiated a much greater strength, as if he had advanced at least 50 levels. The change left her questioning how such a thing could have happened. At the same time, reached the mountain's rear and expertly picked out various herbs, a skill that had become second nature to him. As he leaned over to gather one, a flicker of movement at the edge of his vision drew his attention. There, barely visible yet instantly recognizable, stood a figure he knew well. When recognized the person standing before him, a wide smile spread across his face. He realized it was the same individual from the day before, and wondered aloud about their abrupt departure, mentioning that he hadn't had the chance to express his gratitude. Ding Ding's eyes widened with surprise as she heard Mi's name, her mind racing to figure out the reason behind it. The character hoped to be included the next time an exciting place was discovered and wished to be invited along, suspected that something must have snapped in this man's mind. Despite her doubts, she continued forward, determined. The concept of an everlasting soul lingered in her thoughts, and she wondered if its fate truly rested with her. He remained within, silent and mysterious. She questioned the phrase eternal slope, feeling certain that it didn't make sense and suspecting it might refer to some ancient artifact. She realized she had already been asked about it twice. He tilted his head in curiosity, silently wondering what mysterious object his senior sister was referring to. Ding Ning's patients suddenly lost their composure, feeling certain that Ding Ning was making fun of them. He frowned in confusion, unable to understand her point, and silently triggered his know-it-all ability to gather information about her. A soft chime echoed, "Ding Ding." At 18 years old, she held the title of disciple at the Pleasure Pavilion while secretly serving as an undercover agent for the Tai sect. She had reached level 29 and possessed an impressive talent known as the heartstrings of 1,000 turns. Her mission was clear. She needed to find the eternal soul. Realization dawned that the target was the soul, not something else, and it certainly resembled a valuable relic. Felt a wave of shock upon learning that she belonged to the righteous sex. Confusion swirled in his mind as he wondered why she was pursuing him. Was it truly just for that artifact? After all, he considered himself nothing more than a... The character noted that the girl was just level 29, and posed little danger. However, he realized that if he accidentally ended her life, it could ruin his opportunity to join the forces of justice later on. He continued to act as if nothing was wrong, hoping no one would notice. He looked to senior sister Ding, silently wishing she would clarify the situation, since he truly couldn't understand what was happening. Ding Ning narrowed his eyes as he surveyed the area he had already scouted, confirming that no one else was nearby. He realized that his opponent was more clever than he appeared, and decided it was time to resort to force. In an instant, she sprang forward and seized by the neck, her tone icy and commanding as she demanded that he quit his act and surrender the eternal soul if he wanted to survive. A sly grin spread across his face as he wondered if giving it up would truly guarantee his freedom. Ding Ning offered a subtle smile, making it clear that cooperation was all he required. His face grew stern with disbelief. The idea that a devoted member of the Tai sect would show mercy to someone from the demon cult seemed impossible to accept. Ding Ming's complexion drained of color as shock him. He wondered anxiously how this person could possibly know his identity. Chose to remain silent. Instead, he seized her wrist and forcefully twisted it, causing a sharp crack to ring out in the air. Ding Ming cried out in agony and staggered away, widening the gap between himself and the other person. His power left the other person in disbelief, unable to comprehend how someone could possess such strength. A subtle smile played on his lips as he remembered a past favor, silently reminding the other that he was simply repaying an old debt from their previous journey together. Because they had been brought to that place, they unexpectedly discovered an opportunity and eventually quickly amassed a great deal of wealth. Ding Ning clenched her jaw and swiftly lifted her arm, narrowly managing to shield herself from He's approaching punch. Despite Ding Ning's determination, the vast difference in their cultivation levels rendered his efforts futile, making his struggle as hopeless as a tiny insect attempting to halt a rolling wagon. In the following instant, a surge of spirit energy erupted from his fist, resembling a powerful wave as it shot directly through her chest. The impact propelled her body more than 10 meters through the air before she crashed hard onto the ground. Cast a cold glance downward at her, showing no hint of warmth. He wondered why he should worry about being seen when she clearly hadn't been afraid herself. Soon after, that all traces of her life had disappeared. Despite having the opportunity to walk away, he remained where he was, quietly remarking to himself that this was the ideal moment to try out his latest spell, Corpse Explosion. When the technique took effect, Ding Ning's entire form exploded into fine particles, vanishing completely without a single remnant. Looked at the spotless crater in front of him, and allowed a small smile to appear on his face. He thought to himself that cleaning up now would be much safer this way. From a distance, Wu and Fang Ying had already seen everything that had happened. In's brows drew together in concern as he processed the news. They had only just discovered that Ding Ning was secretly working for the Tai sect. He wondered how Ding Ning could have uncovered their secret so quickly. Meanwhile, Wu's eyes sparkled with curiosity, not about how Ding Ning had found out, but about the impressive power he had shown and the mysterious spell he had unleashed. There was something unusual about that boy, yet his ability to make quick decisions made him a perfect match for their cult. The individual worked with precision and cold determination, using sharp intellect to eliminate any traces left behind. That outcome was satisfactory. Wu turned away, her voice taking on a chillier edge as she instructed that she should be responsible for teaching him proper techniques. She also allowed him permission to study the scrolls kept within the archive pavilion. Her eyes grew cold. With Ding Ning gone, the Tai spies concealed among their group would surely grow restless. The order was clear. Every last one of them had to be found and eliminated without hesitation. Fang Ying wasted no time, giving a quick nod, signaling understanding. With determination, he silently promised to carry out every instruction from his lord with care and precision. Fang Ying hurried after her master, her voice carrying a light-hearted note as she begged her not to move so quickly. At the same time, he believed he could make out quiet voices coming from far away. His heartbeat quickened with sudden anxiety as he wondered nervously if anyone had noticed his actions. He let out a soft sigh, feeling disappointed that Ding Ning had not been able to introduce him to the exciting spots she had mentioned. Soon, he gathered all the herbs needed to make the fever medicine and returned, his voice bright as he announced his arrival and promised to prepare the remedy for Little. As he entered the kitchen, he stopped in his tracks. Wu, now completely recovered, moved about with renewed energy. She glanced his way, a bright smile on her face, and conveyed through her cheerful expression that the medicine from his master had acted immediately. She was well again. Let out a helpless laugh, thinking to himself that his master's concoction was worthy of an award for its effectiveness. He marveled at how the remedy not only treated colds, but also reduced fevers, and realized that all the herbs he had gathered had ended up being unnecessary. He decided to dry the herbs for future use and crouched down to arrange them in an even layer. As he completed his task, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from outside. In an instant, a group of people stormed into the room, their presence filled with menace. At the front of the group stood a disciple from the pleasure pavilion, his expression full of arrogance as he loudly demanded for the kitchen steward to appear immediately. Upon hearing the commotion, Kai Bo quickly emerged from the kitchen, followed by a handful of disciples, eager to find out what was happening. Upon realizing their identities, Kai Bo adopted a flattering tone and acknowledged that the visitors were the esteemed young nobles from the pleasure pavilion. He politely inquired what services they required and wondered aloud if the food from the kitchen had failed to satisfy them. Without hesitation, unsheathed the sword from his waist and pressed its cold edge against his throat, his voice ringing with accusation. He declared that he was responsible for the death of his junior sister, Ding Ning, and reminded everyone of the 9 Nether Hall's strict code. Anyone who killed a fellow disciple must face death in return. Called upon the steward to observe as he prepared to carry out the sentence himself. Even with the truth out in the open, he stayed calm and responded coolly, insisting that he was nothing more than a simple cook. He questioned whether someone like him could truly be capable of ending the life of a disciple from the pleasure pavilion, suggesting that they were overestimating his abilities. Ignored his attempts to explain himself. She reminded him that before leaving, Junior's sister Ding had announced she was going to look for him, yet she still hadn't come back. Despite their efforts to search the entire area, Ding was nowhere to be found and was convinced he was responsible. Meanwhile, the accused man only raised his hands as if to declare his innocence. He challenged their accusations, insisting that even if he had done something, it was unreasonable for them to immediately assume he was a murderer. Despite everything, the suspicion directed at him was understandable. After all, they were all members of the demon cult, known for drawing their swords at the slightest provocation. He insisted that anyone accusing him him of murdering senior sister Ding Ning should present solid proof to support their claim. Standing nearby, Kai Bo quickly chimed in, asking the young lord for proof. If there was no evidence to present, he insisted they should stop wasting time and let them get back to preparing their meal. At that moment, a relaxed and indifferent woman's voice drifted over from nearby, remarking that her apprentice truly was nowhere to be found. Yen had been the final person to see Ding Ning, which meant it was reasonable for others to question him. As the situation unfolded, a remarkably elegant woman appeared, Shen, the respected leader of the Pleasure Pavilion and Ding Ning's mentor. Shen addressed Mr. Kai once more, suggesting that he remain at the Mirror Terrace for several days. Shen explained that after the investigation was complete, he would be able to clear He's name. Kai immediately responded, questioning whether Shen intended to imprison He at the Mirror Terrace. He wanted to reassure them that this was not imprisonment. He proposed a solution. If they allowed him 5 days, he promised to ensure the others' well-being. Kai Bo instantly became confused, and without thinking looked over at Wu for guidance. She noticed the master's pale hands curling tightly into fists, her face unmistakably darkened by displeasure. Upon witnessing the situation, Kai Bo quickly spun around and questioned what would happen if he refused to comply. Shen simply lifted his shoulders and spread his hands in a relaxed manner, as if the situation did not concern him. He stated without emotion that, based on the evidence, he could only determine that he was the killer. He accused the other person of hiding someone guilty and ordered that he be put to death at once. Kai could not find any words in response, stunned by the accusation. Shocked, he wondered if this meant he would face execution as well. At that instant, quietly sent a message to Kai. She cared deeply for her students and would go to great lengths to defend them. Getting involved with her would only lead to complications. Advised that Yin should simply be detained, since she was unlikely to uncover any clues. He also instructed Kai to accompany Yin and, if possible, offer her some lessons during the process. When Kai Bo heard the news, a serious determination settled over him. He insisted that the suspect be detained immediately, warning that he would not tolerate failure if no evidence turned up. Additionally, he made it clear that he needed to stay by his side throughout the process. The group's intensity unsettled her, and concern for her disciples' well-being flickered across her mind as she feared they might resort to bullying. Intended to leave by himself, but Kai intervened and insisted that the conversation was over. Without giving a chance to argue, Kai ordered him to gather some extra clothes because they would be escorting him to confinement. Observing his master's unwavering resolve, silently acknowledged him with a nod before picking up a bag and turning away. Without warning, a realization struck him. He wondered if might be secretly working with Ding Ning. Confusion filled his mind as he questioned why seemed so convinced of his guilt in her death. In addition, there was still uncertainty about the true identity of the that had been referenced. He remained puzzled for a moment, unable to solve the problem, so he decided to return and start gathering his clothes. At that moment, he recalled the seed that his master had instructed him to protect with great care. Was no fool. He had already figured out that the object in question was not a seed. To confirm his suspicions, he used know-it-all to investigate its details. A moment later, a message from the system appeared, revealing that the object was actually the pei and not a simple plant seed. This artifact, known as the pei, held a reputation as a legendary treasure of the highest rank. It was said that anyone who owned it would become the most powerful individual. However, its true purpose was to imprison the real form of along with the demon lord's original soul. After scanning the description, He Yin's brow furrowed with puzzlement. He recognized the demon lord, but the identity of the so-called true person of left him completely baffled. At that moment, someone shouted from outside, telling him to move quickly. Without hesitation, he hurriedly concealed the item, planning to examine it more closely at another time. Confusion lingered in his mind as he questioned the cult leader's decision to give him such a significant object. Despite this uncertainty, being locked up for several days felt bearable, especially if it meant the Po would remain protected. He decided that any investigations into the real identity of the mysterious figure and the demon lord would have to wait until his release. When reached the Pleasure Pavilion, curiosity her as she wondered aloud about the abundance of mirrors surrounding them. Without glancing away from what he was doing, explained that the place wouldn't be named Mirror Terrace if it weren't for all the mirrors. Found himself at a loss for words, realizing that the explanation offered no real clarity at all. He found his curiosity getting the better of him once more, prompting him to inquire about the purpose behind the collection of mirrors. Kept his gaze lowered and replied in a steady voice that the purpose was to keep an eye on them. His expression tightened with annoyance as he realized that it was basically the same as having security cameras everywhere. The thought that they were being observed constantly, even during meals and bathroom breaks, was far from comforting. Bo appeared to sense his unease and gently placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, explaining that there weren't mirrors in every corner and that the situation wasn't as strange as he imagined. Before long, attendants from the Pleasure Pavilion guided he toward a specific room. When the heavy stone door swung open, Gagas informed them in a calm, emotionless tone that they would also be remaining in the room. As soon as he entered the room, Surprise washed over him as he realized that this place hardly resembled a prison. The luxurious furnishings and exceptional comfort far surpassed anything he had imagined, making him feel as if he had stepped into a high-end hotel rather than a cell. Before stepping inside, Kai calmly reminded Master Shun to keep his warning in mind. Without proof that his disciple was at fault, he would not overlook the situation. Upon hearing those words, a chill ran down Shin's spine, causing cold sweat to form as he hurriedly nodded in agreement. Once the door closed behind them, his expression twisted into a snarl, clearly irritated. In his mind, he couldn't believe that someone who was only a cook would have the audacity to address the master in such a manner. Noticing the tension, Shen quickly gestured for everyone to remain quiet. Ji Bo was more than merely a cook, as she made clear with a chill in her voice. She cautioned against asking inappropriate questions and instructed them to discover the whereabouts of their junior sister. She pressed further, wanting to know why his younger sister had been so determined to meet with by herself. After all, was only a boy who worked in the kitchens. What reason could there be for a private conversation? Simply shook his head and admitted he had no idea. His sister had only mentioned that she thought might be a spy and wanted to confirm her suspicions. Upon hearing the accusation, Shen's expression darkened with a deep frown. The idea of a spy seemed utterly ridiculous to him. Such nonsense couldn't possibly be true. The thought of a spy lurking near was so absurd. He believed only someone foolish would consider it. Furthermore, he reminded himself that uncovering spies was not part of the Pleasure Pavilion's responsibilities. His calm demeanor shattered in an instant. He realized that his junior sister's actions had been for the benefit of the Nine Nether Hall all along. Rumors had spread that the cult leader had ended his retreat, and now countless outsiders were eager to snatch the that she possessed. When someone brought up the cult leader, Shun's face shifted into a peculiar look. He wondered silently about the leader's absence, finding it unusual that she had not appeared since ending her isolation. At the same time, and Kaibo themselves with cleaning the room and organizing their everyday items. After scanning the area, noticed the absence of any mirrors and quietly exhaled, feeling safer. He reasoned that since he wasn't outside, the demon would likely target the senior. If her poison flared up again, she might seek out any man nearby for assistance. He questioned his own concern for her, recalling how she had shown no hesitation in leaving him completely exhausted. At that moment, Kaibo's face grew serious, and he fixed him with an intense, unwavering stare. He quickly raised his hand, unleashing a surge of spiritual energy that burst through the air in his direction. Had experienced a dramatic boost in his senses and reflexes ever since his level had rapidly increased. Having quickly avoided the attack, he glared in frustration at his master, his thoughts full of indignation. He couldn't help but think that if he hadn't reacted in time, he would have been crushed on the spot. Kaibo regarded him with a serious expression, his gaze unwavering. He noticed the number 60 floating above his master's head and couldn't help but whisper to himself in surprise. Never before had he witnessed his master appear so solemn. Remained wordless, prompting Kaibo's presence to intensify. Kaibo pressed him, questioning how someone who had been an average person just days before could have changed so drastically in such a short time. A wave of tension swept over him, causing his throat to tighten with anxiety. At last, he understood that his master was far more than just an ordinary chef. Struggling to keep his composure, he admitted that although he had reached level 60, he truly had no idea how it had occurred. Upon hearing those words, Kaibo's lips curled into a sly, entertained smile, as if he doubted that the other person truly didn't know the reason. The sight of that smile sent a wave of panic through him, had dragged him along on a trip, only to abandon him somewhere deep in the mountains. Lost and confused, he wandered into a strange area, then everything went dark. When consciousness returned, he found himself at level 60. He urged his master to consider the situation. How could someone just leap to level 60 out of nowhere? Given those circumstances, hitting it was inevitable. Besides, it was obvious he hadn't learned even one proper skill. Upon hearing those words, Chi couldn't help but break into laughter. He dropped onto the bed and told her that if anyone questioned her next time, she should simply say he was the one who trained her. He pointed out that she was trying to conceal her abilities and dismissed her excuses as unbelievable ghost stories. The speaker showed no interest in how the other person had advanced, convinced that some stroke of luck had granted them amazing fortune. He thought the kid's luck was unbelievable. When both the cult leader and In accused the kid of killing Ding Ning, he hadn't believed their words for a second. Upon hearing those words, his expression shifted in an instant. The truth coming to light had caught him completely off guard. Kaibo watched as disciples grew anxious, then let out a loud, mocking laugh. He reminded them that he had been the one to kill, clearly enjoying their fear. Noticing their nervousness, he pointed out how anxious they looked now, sweating with worry, and taunted them about their earlier boldness when they committed the act themselves. Now he questioned, what was it that made them so frightened? The leaders of the cult, both the main and the deputy, were already aware that members of the Nine Nether Demon Hall could kill without hesitation. They had been present the entire time, observing every move as it happened. Upon hearing the news, he smacked his forehead in realization and murmured softly to himself, finally understanding why he had sensed eyes on him. Despite this, he noticed that Master showed no signs of anger. Without warning, Bo removed the ring from his index finger. The moment he did, an overwhelming and frightening energy surged from his body, weighing down on the surroundings so intensely that found it hard to breathe. Kaibo casually threw the ring toward, apologizing as he admitted that he hadn't removed the ring in centuries, so its energy might feel overwhelming at first, but would soon dissipate. He explained that the ring was a powerful artifact made for concealment, and instructed to put it on and continue pretending to be an innocent, oblivious lover. As gazed at the ring resting in his palm, a powerful wave of emotion swept over him, bringing him so close to tears that they nearly glimmered in his eyes. He looked at Bo with gratitude shining in his eyes and spoke in a gentle, affectionate voice, expressing how much he appreciated the Master's kindness. Upon noticing the deeply moved look on the other's face, Kaibo let out a dismissive snort. He reminded the person not to overlook the kindness the cult leader had shown. Kaibo insisted that if the person ever achieved great success, they must remember to return the favor to her. His brow furrowed as confusion crossed his face. He wondered silently why the cult leader treated him with such unexpected kindness, directing his question to his master in his thoughts. Bo's cheeks turned a faint shade of red as he cleared his throat. He seemed frustrated that the other person still didn't understand. He thought to himself that when the cult leader took an interest in someone, slipping away from her grasp was nearly impossible. Despite everything, she believed he had promise, which is why she asked for her guidance in teaching him survival techniques. Since he had addressed her as master for such a long time, she felt obligated to share her knowledge. Now, she decided it was time to reveal her own special move, known as the Ruthless Hand. Upon hearing those words, his eyes sparkled with excitement as he eagerly expressed his desire to learn. Gave a small nod, focusing his strength while he spoke. He described the Ruthless Hand as an art built entirely on mercilessness. Its attacks were swift and powerful. With each strike, it sapped away both the blood and spirit energy of its target. After understanding the fundamental technique, a person is able to switch to using an unforgiving finger strike. With this method, every ounce of power is focused into the tip of their finger. Such a strike is sharp enough to penetrate acupuncture points and instantly block an opponent's meridians. At the height of their merciless power, their grasp transformed into a domain defined by everlasting cruelty. At that moment, his face became stiff and unmoving. He observed the sudden silence, and with curiosity, wondered why his master had fallen quiet. Bo let out a quiet laugh and gestured casually. He advised that it was best to master only the fundamentals, cautioning against striving for absolute mastery. He reflected that advancing too far in this skill could lead to a hardened heart, and that true ruthlessness often left behind a shadow of remorse. His eyes fluttered in surprise. He noticed that his master still showed feelings, which made wonder if the master had truly achieved the highest level. Bo's expression grew difficult to read. He knew he had achieved it. He was talented, after all. Not even being at the height of his own cruelty could shake his abilities. Noticing the uncertainty in his master's expression, he grinned as if he had just confirmed a long-held suspicion. He had always believed his master was more than just a simple cook. To him, his master was like a mysterious monk, quietly keeping the kitchen in order while hiding his true abilities. Quickly rose to his feet and signaled too, indicating that the area outside offered more room. He intended to show what he meant through a demonstration. Hurried after, voicing his concern in a careful tone, as he wondered about the mirrors outside and whether anyone might try to imitate the technique. Bo let out a quiet laugh, amused by the idea. He believed that anyone trying to imitate him must have a reckless desire for danger. In his mind, spending time confined within the mirror terrace brought nothing but advantages. He considered it the ideal environment for concentrating on his cultivation. Upon hearing those words, he flashed a mischievous grin, thinking how impressive it was. He considered his master to be almost as powerful as the cult leader and the deputy, someone truly worth relying on and never letting go. Before long, the pair reached a wide, open space. Once Kaibo finished stretching, he announced his intention to demonstrate the technique. He encouraged everyone to observe closely and focus on memorizing the sequence. First the form, then the intent behind each movement. He also reassured them that any mistakes would be corrected along the way. Upon hearing these words, lowered his head in a gesture of respect, silently acknowledging his master's command. Focused deeply, drawing upon the energy within himself as he breathed in the mystical forces surrounding him. The immense strength within his body coursed through his meridians, causing his presence to grow stronger with each passing moment. Suddenly, a booming cry filled the air, causing all movement to instantly cease. Once Kaibo finished, he turned to the listener and inquired about how much they had managed to remember, encouraging them to imitate what they had heard and assuring them that making mistakes was perfectly acceptable. His imitation caught him off guard. Each movement was executed with such precision, even surpassing the sharpness and grace of his own. Even Kaibo, who usually kept his strength concealed, found himself amazed by the remarkable talent his disciples displayed. The man stared at the young person in astonishment, questioning whether it could truly be their first experience with martial arts. He rubbed his head in confusion, admitting to himself that it was his first attempt. However, since he had begun at level 60, he wondered if that had made things less challenging. Bo's lips curled into a proud smile as he gently patted the young man's shoulder. He marveled at the boy's remarkable talent, silently acknowledging that the cult leader had made a wise decision. Confident in his abilities, Bo resolved to give the boy every bit of guidance and support he could offer. At the same time, hidden away in the innermost room of the pleasure pavilion, the pavilion master observed the reflection unfolding before him. His curiosity clearly piqued. Upon witnessing's remarkable skill, she allowed a subtle smirk to appear on her lips. She silently acknowledged his impressive abilities. Considering the possibility that he was not responsible for her disciple's death, she began to contemplate taking him under her wing as her own apprentice. Just a short time earlier, Bo had entrusted his most advanced technique too. After spending 3 days honing the skill, had not yet reached the level of his teacher, but his progress was sufficient to protect himself. Surprisingly, mastering the merciless technique proved to be more straightforward than expected. Slowly, He Yen started to lose touch with where he came from, abandoning the demon sect to align himself with the forces of good. Eager to test the merciless grab hand technique, Chi abruptly struck him with a swift hand chop. He questioned the young boy about why he was talking to the wall and wondered how his practice was coming along. Without much notice, the boy pointed to the mark on the wall, eager to show his progress, and explained to his teacher that he could now leave a palm print as well. Upon witnessing the scene, Bo was thoroughly impressed by the remarkable display. He silently acknowledged that the cultivation skills before him were truly extraordinary, far surpassing what he had achieved at that stage. Reflecting on his own past, he recalled how it had taken him a full decade to reach a similar level, realizing that he could not compare to such overwhelming talent. Upon hearing the news, he quietly remarked to himself that, being level 60 now, he had a distinct advantage. He thought that if he were only at level 0, even 50 years of training might not be enough for success. He acknowledged he was benefiting from his current strength. Bo managed to catch the words anyway. He wondered if the kid had sweetened his tongue with honey. Still, he had to admit the kid was smart enough to speak quietly. The item had arrived directly from Head Fangying, who had taken the time to ensure its delivery. The recipient was expected to examine it thoroughly. The disciple wondered about the unfamiliar technique, noticing that it lacked a title. They also observed that the acting sect head hadn't offered any explanation, simply placing the book down in silence before departing. Hesitated before accepting it, his brow creasing in confusion. To him, the technique didn't resemble a fighting style at all. Instead, it reminded him of an ancient manual focused on nurturing internal energy. Afterward, he put the matter out of his mind, flipped open the manual, and started to study its contents with close attention. He eagerly tucked the manual aside, feeling enthusiastic as he prepared to start practicing. Bo felt a wave of irritation wash over him. All these years spent raising the boy, yet he had never noticed the child's deep fascination with cultivation. Had he discovered this passion sooner, he would have started teaching him from a young age. Now, he could only regret missing such an important opportunity. Rather than hastily beginning his training, relied on his analytical skills to investigate where the manual came from. He discovered it was a special type of scripture known as the Kamming method, designed to purify true Kai. This technique could even overwrite the body's natural energy pathways, allowing power to move effortlessly along the meridians. His self-control shattered in that instant. The words Kamming Core and Kamming Scripture echoed in his mind, leaving him stunned. According to the logic of the story, it seemed clear that the two characters had some kind of connection. Deciding not to dwell on it, they moved forward and began their practice. He steadied his thoughts and attempted the breathing technique described at the beginning of the book. Immediately, a wave of calm washed over him, loosening every tense muscle. The sensation reminded him of being cleansed from within, each inhale refreshing him like the gentle air of a shaded woodland. As his senses heightened, sounds grew sharper and colors became more distinct, making everything around him feel intensely real. The words of the scripture struck a deep chord within him, making it seem as though they had been crafted just for his understanding. Without hesitation, he resolved to approach his master for answers about the true person of, hoping to discover the figure's identity and perhaps even become his student in the future. He approached and immediately inquired if the master was aware of surreal identity. Bo was caught off guard by the unexpected question. Internally, he called the other person a brat, puzzled by how someone so young could be aware of such a legendary figure. Without missing a beat, He Yin smoothly made up a story, claiming he had gotten in trouble recently for snooping around the scripture pavilion, where he had stumbled upon some information. Kaibo revealed that real identity was that of a legendary figure from a millennium past, someone rumored to have almost reached the realm of the gods. Tragically, this individual had met his end alongside the demon lord in a fierce confrontation. Upon hearing this, he drew in a sharp breath, realizing with shock that the demon lord referred to was actually their former cult leader. This meant that had once battled their ancestor and ultimately suffered defeat. Bo slowly shook his head, clarifying that although their group was considered a demon cult, and others referred to their leader as the demon lord, the individual he was referring to was actually the ruler of the entire demon race. He quickly responded that the term demon race was unfamiliar to him. As he pondered silently, he questioned whether this world truly held advanced magic. He wondered how it was possible to have lived here his whole life yet remain unaware of such things. He recalled creatures like night wolves, but in his mind, those were merely spirit beasts that absorbed the surrounding energy, nothing more. Bo explained that after the Great War, the demon race disappeared completely, and no one had seen them since then. He mentioned that ordinary people would have no way of knowing about this, and that he had only learned of it from his own master. He admitted that he could not confirm if the story was true or not. Many believed these stories were nothing more than myths, as so much time had passed that certainty was impossible. Just then, a notification from the system echoed unexpectedly, announcing that young master had discovered a clue about the world's true nature. This revelation activated a new adventure, and he received an adventure shard as a reward. He was astonished to discover that the world's truth, which the master of the demon race had mentioned, actually existed. The legend of, along with the scripture and the true person of, was not just a myth. However, something about this revelation seemed strange to he. He quickly expressed his desire to return and continue practicing the unnamed piece. After taking his time to study the book, his uncertainty intensified. He wondered if the real might have been the one who wrote it. The thought troubled him. How could a remarkable manuscript like this end up in the hands of the demon cult? As flipped to the final page, his eyes narrowed abruptly, revealing a surge of shock. The gift was offered to the two disciples, along with a hope that they would achieve a breakthrough in the near future. Yin felt even more confused as he wondered about the identities of the two disciples. At the same time, Pavilion Master Shun gazed into the small mirror she held, quietly wondering to herself what the others had been discussing, since their hushed voices made it impossible for her to hear. A woman's voice abruptly broke the silence, stopping her mid-sentence. The woman questioned if little Kay wasn't worried about witnessing something she shouldn't see. Upon hearing this, Pavilion Master Shun stood up with an uneasy motion, wondering why the deputy sect master had come to see him. The person who had just arrived was revealed to be Yin, who was now serving as the interim head of the demon cult. A short while earlier, Deputy Master approached Pavilion Master Shun, who was secretly observing he. Rumors swirled about a traitor hiding within the Pleasure Pavilion, yet the sect leader had failed to detect any signs. Acting on orders from the cult leader, Yin confronted the Pavilion Master, questioning whether he intended to remain in his position of authority. Pavilion Master Shun reeled in disbelief at the mention of a mole, struggling to comprehend how such a thing could be possible. Yin offered a knowing smile, silently encouraging the other person to take on the investigation with care and determination. The cult leader had recently emerged from isolation, and was now occupied with numerous responsibilities, leaving little time for additional concerns. To avoid causing her any distress, Pavilion Master Shen quickly dropped to his knees, vowing to conduct a thorough investigation to reassure both the cult leader and the deputy. At the same time, guided her group to the location where Ding Ning had lost his life. He concealed a mocking smile, thinking to himself that failing to properly conceal a body brought shame to their nether demon cult. He gestured to the rest of the group, signaling that it was time for them to begin uncovering the pit. Noticing that all three were about to resort to violence, he lost his temper in an instant. He questioned their judgment, wondering if they had any sense at all, since attacking together could ruin the remains. Frustrated, he demanded that they start excavating properly, insisting they use shovels or pickaxes, and threatened to do it himself if they couldn't handle it. Upon receiving those instructions, the men quickly gathered their equipment and started to dig with great urgency within the pit. Despite having excavated to a depth of 5 meters, the group still saw no sign of Ding Ning's body. Uncertainty crept in among them, making them question if they might have chosen the wrong location. Asserted with absolute certainty, leaving no room for doubt. He detected a subtle scent lingering in the air, one that belonged to senior sister Ding Ning. Though it was delicate, there was no doubt it was hers. Her presence here was certain. She had definitely passed through this place. At that moment, Pavilion Master Shun appeared at the location to look into the matter of the traitor. She uncapped her bottle and poured out its contents. She explained in a chilly tone that members of the Pleasure Pavilion practiced the dual harmony technique, resulting in their bodily fluids carrying unique substances. These substances would interact with the forgetting love water that she used in her own cultivation. There would be a noticeable response if Ding Ning was actually present. As soon as she finished speaking, a burst of violet violet fog shot up from the earth, swiftly covering everything around it. At the same time, Wu observed from behind the mirror, quietly noting to herself how hardworking the young man was in his training. A moment earlier, he had received praise, but now his actions had come to a halt. Suspicion grew as he began moving about quietly, his behavior suggesting he was up to something secretive. Brad's whereabouts became the subject of curiosity, as someone wondered what he was doing. Abruptly swung open the heavy stone door to his chamber, catching her attention. Wu hurriedly changed the perspective to observe the child's next move. A new idea sparked his thoughts. He resolved to direct True Kai into the core, curious about what might occur. Wasting no time, he sent every bit of the purified True Kai into the core. Wu Xin watched in disbelief as the core radiated a brilliant golden light. To his amazement, roots emerged from the core, gradually shaping themselves into a miniature tree. She was in utter disbelief. For a millennium, she had relied on the forbidden 9 nether soul-devouring scripture, absorbing the souls and spiritual energy of countless beings, yet the elusive core had always evaded her grasp. Now, before her eyes, he had managed to achieve in mere days what she could not accomplish in centuries. Before she managed to get very far, a sudden, recognizable ache pierced her heart once more. At the same time, his annoyance continued to build. He realized that anyone unable to harness True Kai would be completely unable to operate this artifact. To make matters worse, the item appeared to have no obvious purpose. The system's analysis labeled it as partly genuine and partly counterfeit, but saw little value in that information. In his mind, something that was only halfway trustworthy was hardly useful at all. At that moment, someone rushed into the room and motioned for Kai Bo to stay back. The frail Wu appeared in the doorway, and as soon as she stepped inside, she silently shoved Hai to the ground. She insisted urgently that there was no time for explanations. Noticing her agitation increasing, he quickly tried to explain that he hadn't packed many clothes. Wu Xian collapsed onto him, her expression contorted in pain. She signaled urgently to Yin, desperate for assistance in ridding her body of the searing poison. The elderly master stood outside, unable to do anything but shield his face as the endless noises continued to resound from inside. Suddenly, a deafening crash echoed through the chamber as someone forcefully kicked open the heavy stone door. Pavilion Master Shun, having uncovered the killer's identity through hidden techniques, gathered an outraged crowd. Armed with undeniable evidence, she arrived, determined to carry out the execution then and there. She burst into the room, loudly declaring her intent to seek revenge for her student, demanding that her opponent reveal themselves. In the following moment, Pavilion Master Shun's face contorted with an odd and unexplainable look. She witnessed firsthand the cult leader, believed to be hidden away between life and death, standing in his room and gazing at her with an icy stare. Startled, she forcefully closed the door behind her, as if something terrifying had suddenly appeared before her eyes. Her mind almost shut down as she questioned whether she had just imagined what happened. All the disciples standing below wore expressions of complete bewilderment, their faces filled with curiosity as they tried to understand what had just occurred. Pavilion Master Shun inhaled slowly, steadying her nerves before signaling to the others to step out of the way. The situation was not truly dangerous, though it felt quite alarming. At that moment, she spotted Kai crouched not far away. Quickly making her way over, she joined him in a crouch and leaned in to quietly ask why he hadn't mentioned that the cult leader was inside. No one could understand why the cult leader would be seen in the company of He Yan. Kai Bo, weighed down by guilt, began inventing explanations. He wondered to himself how he could possibly know the truth. Perhaps the woman had spent so much time in isolation that, upon re-entering the world, the first man she encountered captured her heart. It might have simply been a case of falling in love at first sight. Pavilion Master Shun fixed him with another intense gaze, demanding to know the duration of the pair's dual cultivation. Jiyu Bo's wrinkled face turned bright red with embarrassment. He realized he had lost feeling in his legs after crouching for such a long time, though he wasn't sure why. Someone questioned him about his blushing, teasing that his pleasure pavilion was known for practicing dual cultivation all day. At that moment, a flash of red light shot through the doorway, disappearing inside the room almost immediately. A swift, almost invisible beam of light darted through the air, making every effort to remain unnoticed. Its path led straight to the sect's back mountain, where Fang Yin stood ready, clutching a bundle of clothes, just as she and the cult leader had agreed. The moment Wu touched down, Fang Ying leaned in and softly inquired if she had been spotted, wondering if the cult leader had discovered her. Wu gave a silent nod. Shen had noticed her along with Hai, fully aware that the technique Wu studied made it impossible for her to easily harm her own body. His posture stiffened at once, ready to act if needed. He silently offered to take care of the situation, but Wu declined with a subtle shake of her head, confident that the other woman wouldn't risk starting any rumors. The speaker instructed others to monitor carefully, making sure he remained loyal to the 9 nether cult. After giving this order, the speaker mentioned plans to go meet. Fang Yin's expression shifted in an instant as she realized she could not allow that to occur. The Nine Heavens sect and the Nine had always been bitter rivals, with fresh wounds slowing her down. Approaching them would mean certain death. Wu, trapped inside, struggled until she managed to break away from the grip that held her, silently demanding to be released. The speaker reminded the other person that they had already asked them to stop touching them so frequently. Yin quickly retreated a few steps, wary that the cult leader might suddenly become violent. Despite the long years of silence between them, she continued her efforts to convince her. Although was her sister by blood, centuries had passed since their last conversation, and at their stage in life, familial bonds held little significance. Wu dismissed her with a gesture, signaling that she had heard enough. She instructed her to come up with a reason to let he go, making it clear that she intended to bring him along. Yin's expression contorted with envy as she questioned inwardly why he had been chosen, silently wishing she could be the one in his place. Wu Xian let out a frustrated sigh, her hand moving to grip her own chin as she challenged whether the other person was even capable of that task. Without waiting for a response, she pushed the other person away and firmly ordered her to obey. With her cheeks burning and her body splayed out on the ground, Yin quietly resolved that, for the cult leader's benefit, she would one day develop that skill on her own.